Hey, folks, coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered for Thursday, January 17th, 2019. Federal government shutdown enters its 26th day. Donald Trump, what does he do? He gets real petty, and he cancels an overseas trip for members of Congress. But how stupid was he? He actually unveiled where they were going. It's called security risk, idiot. We'll talk about this drama with Congressman Anthony Brown from Maryland, and also we hear from Congressman Gregory Meeks of New York about the impact of the federal shutdown on their community and the country. The Women's March takes place on Saturday, but there's been tons of drama over the last several months. Various companies, various groups are pulling out of the Women's March as a result of what they say is anti-Semitism by its organizers. Well, Tamika Mallory, she is one of the folks being targeted. She will be with me live to answer my questions with regards to all that is going on. Plus, I will also reveal to you the group of black women and their allies who have signed a letter of support for Tamika Mallory. We'll let you know about that. Yesterday, on the Senate, they had, of course, confirmation hearing for Trump's Attorney General nominee, and they, of course, most national media pretty much ignored it. But that was this unbelievable exchange between the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Lindsey Graham, and various civil rights leaders. And Graham was a little perturbed as to why the NAACP had the audacity to only give him a 22% score on their report card, and Democrats got 100%. And he was just perplexed, and he said, I'm not a racist. I shall deconstruct this entire discussion. Y'all definitely don't want to miss this. And I'm going to show you exactly why Republicans continue to flunk the NAACP scorecard. We'll be also joined by NAACP CEO Derek Johnson. Trust me, it's a conversation you do not want to miss. Remember when I broke down Kanye? Yeah, Lindsey's about to get the Kanye treatment from Roland Martin. Black employees at a General Motors plant in Toledo, Ohio found nooses, whites-only bathroom signs, and flat-out racist language in their workplace. It was so bad some of them quit, and now they're suing General Motors. Yes, even other details are disgusting. One of the plaintiffs will join us live from Toledo. And the cops who tried to cover up Jason Van Dyke's murder of Laquan McDonald in Chicago had their case decided today. The judge says, y'all can go home. What the hell is happening in Chicago? It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the biz, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling.
All right, folks, federal government is 26th day of a shutdown. No negotiations are happening between Donald Trump, Republicans, and Democrats. There's no end in sight. Trump, of course, is adamant that he has to receive funding for his wall or steel planks or whatever the hell it is, where he's pretty much trying to satisfy the likes of nutcase Ann Coulter and uber nutcase Rush Limbaugh. Now, Nancy Pelosi, the Democrats, are not going to give it to him, and the question is, what is going to happen next? Joining us right now is Congressman Anthony Brown of Maryland, who is a member of the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman, glad to have you on the show. So, you see what's going on here. Trump loves to wrap himself in the flag and hug it and kiss it and caress it and talk about how he loves the military. But what is the impact on this shutdown on our military, on troops, on contractors who also work with our Department of Defense?
The impact is devastating. I live in a district, I represent a district with the fifth largest number of federal contractors, federal employees, and small businesses that relied on federal employees. And I see it every day. People say, well, tell the stories. I hear the stories every single day, the hardships that are going on. This is the first time in this shutdown, the first time in the history of our country where you have men and women who put on the uniform to serve us. These are men and women in the Coast Guard. They're part of the Homeland Security apparatus that the president is trying to say, hey, I'm all about Homeland Security. That's why I'm shutting down government or keeping it shut down. And he's hurting the very people who are charged, who are to serve and to protect our homeland. That's the men and women in the Coast Guard. You've got that security risk. You've got the security risk at the airports. Those men and women who work for TSA, they're dedicated. They come to work every day, but they're human beings.
Yeah, in fact, I mean, I was in North Carolina last night. I was flying in, flew back to D.C. Workers were there doing their job, showing up there. But we were seeing all around the country. We've seen shutdowns in Houston, my hometown. We've seen it in Atlanta, where they're having to shut down checkpoints. And you've got backed up lines of travelers because TSA folks are not showing up, calling in for work for sick, or just some flat out quitting.
And even those who are showing up, again, these are human beings. So you show up to work and you know you got financial problems at home, you got child care problems because you're not getting a paycheck, right? You're making tough decisions on how you spend nothing because last week's paycheck was a goose egg. People didn't get paid. Next week, Friday, paychecks are supposed to come in. They're not going to get paid unless the government opens up on Tuesday. So how do you go to work as a TSA employee at the airport and get to focus on your job? You don't. That's true for Secret Service. The men and women who protect the president and other high-profile officials, they're on the job and not getting paid. The food inspectors, folks that are inspecting our ports, custom and border, they're all not getting paid. And so it not only has an impact on their families, it has an impact on America. And I think that it goes to the very heart of security and how this is detrimental, this shutdown to our homeland.
So White House says we're not going to budge. Democrats say we're not going to budge. How long does this go?
You know, you can't negotiate with someone who figuratively has a gun to your head. And that's what the president does. He's saying to Congress, I shut down government, so I'm giving you that as your bargaining chip. Wait a second. The default setting is government should be open. So we can't negotiate because today it's the wall, tomorrow it's supplemental nutrition assistance program. The next day it may be another ban on another group of people coming to this country. So you can't negotiate with the president when he's got government shut down. You got to open it. Now, what I suggest, and I'm starting to articulate this and voice this in my caucus, what we need to do, and I know it's hard to do because you got an unpredictable president, okay? A president will say one thing today, something tomorrow, so it's hard to negotiate if possible at all. But let's lay out the framework, okay? By a time certain, okay, let's have an agreement on we're gonna talk about border security. Mm-hmm. We're gonna talk about other aspects of immigration, mm-hmm. whether it's DACA, Dreamers, TPS, whether it's more judges for asylum, and let's at least reach agreement on the conversation that has to be had. Okay, the date by which we have to have it. I'm willing to even go so far as saying let's set a dollar not to exceed amount for border security. Now that's how do you define border security? That'll be part of the negotiation. We don't have to define that now. Open up government and let's make a commitment to having this conversation and ultimately a decision on what we're going to do.
I got to ask you this, and so this happened today. This dropped, let me see the time. And so it was, let's see here, I'm on Twitter here. I want to see what time this tweet was posted. This is the Twitter account of Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders. The time here, it was 3 hours ago, so that was about 3:12. And so what's interesting here is that she released this letter from Donald Trump. It was sent to Nancy Pelosi. And this is what he said. Henry, go to my iPad, please. Dear Madam Speaker, due to the shutdown, I am sorry to inform you that your trip to Brussels, Egypt, and Afghanistan has been postponed. We will reschedule this 7-day excursion when the shutdown is over. In light of the 800,000 great American workers not receiving pay, I'm sure you would agree that postponing this public relations event is totally appropriate. I also feel that during this period, it would be better if you were in Washington negotiating with me and joining the strong border security movement to end the shutdown. Obviously, if you would like to make your journey by flying commercial, that will certainly be your prerogative. I look forward to seeing you soon and even more forward to watching our open and dangerous southern border finally receive the attention, funding, and security it so desperately deserves. Sincerely, Donald Trump. Now, first and foremost, Congress has oversight responsibility, and so this is the executive branch telling the legislative branch what they should do.
This is entirely inappropriate. As you mentioned, Congress has an oversight role, which means we don't do our work just from behind the desk in Washington. We go to Afghanistan. I've been there. We go to Brussels.
Which is a place
NATO.
that he actually hasn't been.
He hasn't been. He's only visited the troops once,
right?
And he bemoaned having to do that as well.
But also, he puts in a public letter, and he is revealing where the Speaker of the House, the person who's third in line for the presidency, and members of Congress are going. He's basically telling Al Qaeda and ISIS, "Hey, heads up!
Yep, she's on the way.
They're coming."
Right? No, we don't do that. We have clear instructions that look, don't talk about where you're going on Codels.
Right.
You want a message on it, do it when you come home.
I mean, I've talked to members of Congress who were actually on them, and I would talk to them on the phone. They could not tell me where they were.
We don't. So not only have I been on Codels, when I was in the Army, in Iraq, on duty, I had members of Congress come and visit. They didn't come just to visit Anthony Brown. They came to visit Iraq.
Right.
They spoke to not only senior leaders, but troops like me and others. They want to hear, hey, is the training right? Are you prepared to do what you need to do? Do you have the leadership? Do you have the resources? How's morale? That's important for Congress to know, to fulfill our functions, to make sure that we're supporting the warfighter. That was a petty move by the president. Do I think it puts soldiers in imminent risk of harm? No, but it prevents Congress from doing its job, which is to fully understand what their needs are, the warfighter, so they can do it well, and come home safely to their families. It was petty.
All right, Congressman Anthony Brown, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Roland.
All right, folks. We also talked to Congressman Gregory Meeks about the federal government shutdown. Here's what he had to say. Donald Trump is adamant that he wants money for his wall. Yet what you have here is that he says he can't trust Democrats. You have you have Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who won't even bring the bill to the floor. This, to me, is just an example of a callous view of Trump and the party screwing federal workers, but not just them. You also have, of course, other folks who are impacted by this as well, contract workers. I mean, this is amazing how they have just pretty much said, we'll do whatever.
Hold on. Let's face this. And this is not just Gregory Meeks saying this, because if you go back, you heard Mitt Romney say this, you heard Marco Rubio say this, you've heard several other, even Lindsey Graham. We have a con man that's in the White House. So you're talking about trust. You cannot trust a con man. There was a bill and agreements that had been made on immigration, and in fact, even on making sure that we keep the government open, where at one time he said he would sign it, he'd be for it, and then as soon as he heard something on Fox News, he went against it. It's a con man. For the first time, what he did, he went into the Oval Office to try to use that as a background to con the American people. And to think that he's anything other than that and or is going to change is not reality. And I think that he also starting to feel the walls closing in on him with the Mueller investigation and all the other things that are being revealed. So that's the reality, and he's not going to change. And the fact that the American people cannot allow themselves to be conned anymore by this man.
But the question is, how do we move forward? If he is saying he is not going to budge, Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Senator Chuck Schumer say they are not going to budge, we are at a standoff.
Well, I think that the way that's going to ultimately happen here is that McConnell, who is going to have to move the Senate. This is a different branch of government. And I think that what you're starting to see is a number of the senators are starting to say, a number of the Republican senators are starting to say that we have to open up government and then have a negotiation as to border security. And it's going to be some building pressure, I think, in the next few days on McConnell to put a bill on the floor of the Senate and vote on it. And then we will vote on it, and we'll put the bill on the president's desk and dare him not to sign the bill. And I think that's how ultimately we will get out of this. The political pressure, the American people will put the pressure on McConnell to make and give some action so that we can resolve this issue.
And I keep explaining to people, Congress can overturn a presidential veto.
That's exactly right. And that's the numbers that are building up, and that's what's building up against this president. If we get McConnell to do it, and those senators see that it is this president, as he's already told the American people, he said he will proudly shut down the government. He will take the blame for it. He won't blame Democrats. Well, those senators will see it also, and their people will also demand that we override any veto that this president puts forward.
All right, Congressman Gregory Meeks in New York. I surely appreciate it. Thanks a bunch, my Alpha brother.
Good to be with you, brother, as always.
All right, thanks a lot.
06.
What's wrong, Scott Bolton? You mad? You mad because you couldn't get in?
Well, you don't have to announce
I don't want to hear.
Alpha is everywhere around just because you're Alpha.
No, but it's true.
He's a congressman.
True. But it's true.
He represents more than Alphas.
Okay. Aloysius or whatever your name is, what the A is Scott Bolton stand for. All right, y'all. First of all, y'all know he blind. I ain't got Kappa red.
It look just like the red letter behind
I got Tiger Woods colors on.
Tiger Woods.
Tiger Woods. All right, y'all. So yesterday, Scott, calm the hell down. Stop talking. Yesterday, y'all, there was an amazing exchange at the confirmation hearings of William Barr for Attorney General. Now, here's what happens. Every time when you have these confirmation hearings, and so he was there for one whole day, and then they have folks who come there who can speak for or against him. So there were a number of folks in the civil rights community who spoke on yesterday. Now, what was very interesting that look, mainstream media not going to cover it. And so what happened was I was online because yesterday, of course, I was in North Carolina speaking at North Carolina Central University. And I saw this video right before I went to speak, and I said, we have got to do this on the show tomorrow. And what was very interesting was that Senator Lindsey Graham, he was just perplexed. He just could not understand why Republicans don't get high grades from the NAACP. I mean, this was this long exchange, and so in the vein of Kanye and others, we shall right now deconstruct, if you will, and offer a teachable moment to Senator Lindsey Graham. And so let's go ahead and press play.
So, Mr. Johnson, thank you for coming today. I listened to your concerns about Mr. Barr. I voted for Holder and Lynch. Do you think I made a good decision voting for them to be Attorney General?
I do.
Why?
I think their presentation before this committee was honest, direct, but more importantly, they committed to protect our democracy. For African Americans, protecting democracy is to also regularly enforce efforts to ensure that all citizens can cast their ballot. Right. They committed to that, and they demonstrated that while they were in office.
Okay, and you believe Mr. Barr will not be committed to that?
I have serious reservations and concerns. Okay. Those concerns first start with this administration, their lack of enforcing Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act.
How much of it is about this administration versus Mr. Barr?
In many ways, it's difficult to separate the two.
So I just want...
Okay. Did y'all not hear the part where Derek Johnson said it's really about the administration, and then Lindsey Graham comes back and says, well, I just think this is about the administration. Okay, Lindsey, the Attorney General of the United States is part of the administration. So therefore, when you are assessing whether or not somebody should be confirmed, you're not there to talk about how great that individual is. You're there because it's a part of the administration. Press play.
I want to suggest something to you. There's a lot of concerns I had about the Obama administration. I will not bore you with my concerns. But I thought he chose wisely with Mr. Holder and Ms. Lynch because they have differences on policy than I, because I'm a Republican. But I thought they would be good stewards of the law and they would be fair arbiters of being Attorney General. It never crossed my mind that I would vote against them because I have policy disagreements. If that's going to be the new standard, none of us are going to vote for anybody on the other side. So,
okay, the whole point of opposing somebody is that when you go before the Senate, it's because of policy. It's not a fun thing. It's not we're in the park. We're not in the sandbox. It's not, hey, can we be buddy? Please check yes or no. That's kind of how this thing goes, Lindsey Graham. So I'm trying to understand why is he so confused over the issue? And okay, you voted for Eric Holder and as well as Loretta Lynch. That has nothing to do with the discussion today. Press play.
Thank you for your input.
But if I may, Mr. Chair,
Please.
going beyond policy disagreement, this nation have had a long history of discriminatory practices, particularly in the criminal justice system. And anytime we have a nominee to come before this committee who truly don't appreciate the disparities in the criminal justice system, as he stated yesterday, that goes beyond policy disagreement. That goes towards whether or not we understand that equal protection of the law should be afforded to all citizens.
I want to make sure you understand what he said, because I remember Senator Booker asking him, and he says, yes, the crack cocaine sentences were disproportionate to the African-American individual, and that's why we changed the disparity between powder cocaine and crack cocaine. He acknowledged that, but in 1992, he thought the biggest victim of rampant violent crime were, low-income, mostly minority communities. So I don't buy what you're saying about him not understanding their differences and how one group is affected, particularly in the drug arena. So I think what he was trying to do is talk about crime. But here's what's perplexing to me.
Stop. Okay. He cherry-picked there because he also said, he said that he did not believe that the legal system treated black folks differently than white folks. That's actually what Derek Johnson was talking about. But you notice how Lindsey Graham tried to only go to the crack cocaine and the powder cocaine disparity. Just want to let y'all know that fact. Press play.
NAACP has been in the fight for social and racial justice for a very long time. And I don't know how we got here, but you do a scorecard every year. And in 2017, every Democrat got 100%. I got 22%. Grassley got 11. Cornyn got 11. Lee got 11. Cruz got 11. Sass got 6. Ernst got 11. Kennedy got 17. Tillis got 11. And Crapo got 6.
Lindsey Graham said, y'all, I don't know how we got here. Here we go to my iPad. This is the NAACP. No, go to my iPad. Go to my iPad. This is the NAACP's report card. This is what it says. Since 1914, the NAACP legislative report card has served as a presentation of key civil rights votes taken in the United States Senate and the United States House of Representatives. The edition that follows contains votes taken during the first session of the 115th Congress, which began January 3rd, 2017, and ended on December 22nd, 2017. The second half of the 115th Congress began on January 2nd, 2018. This report card is designed to provide NAACP members with insight into the general voting patterns of their congressional representatives and state delegations over the course of the first session of the 115th Congress. How did we get here? We've been here, Lindsey, for 104 years. Press play.
There's a disparity here. I hope you think that because I disagree with your scorecard rating, that I'm not a racist, and I certainly don't know how to close this gap.
So
I'd like to.
Right. So the NAACP, we're a nonpartisan organization. Our scorecard is not based on political parties. Our scorecard is based on our agenda.
Well, how do you explain the differences?
If you allow me, our agenda is set by the delegates from across the country. And we're very clear that discrimination should not be a part of
How many of them are
the
Republicans?
agenda. Excuse me?
How many of them are Republicans?
We don't determine how many members are Republicans. We have Republicans among our membership on our national board.
I don't want to
But if you allow me to explain the report card, right? And so we establish our agenda not based on political parties because we understand that political parties are nothing more than vehicles for agendas. And as many African Americans were members of the Republican parties before the 1965 Voting Rights Act, many African Americans may decide their agenda based on the party's platform. And if party platforms align with the needs and interests of our communities, then they would vote for a platform that support their needs, whether it's access to quality public education, ensuring that all African Americans and Americans can cast a fair ballot, fair housing policies, making sure we have true tests to determine disparate impact. Those are the issues we are concerned about. Those are not partisan issues. Those are policy issues. And individuals who run under party labels, they decide based on the platform that they believe which party label they run under. We don't make partisan decisions. We make policy decisions, and it's informed by members across the country. Some are Democrats, some are Libertarians, some are Republicans.
You may not think that you're making, that your agenda is party neutral. All I can tell you is somebody who wants to solve problems. It's pretty odd to me that every Democrat gets 100%, and I do the best as a Republican getting 22. Maybe the problem's all on our side. I don't think so.
Yeah, that's the damn problem. Press play.
I think the agenda that you're pursuing in the eyes of conservatives is not as good for the country as you think it is. It's got...
Did he just say that the agenda of y'all black people is not as good as should be in the eyes of conservatives? That's why we don't vote for your asses, because you vote against the interests of black people. Press play.
Nothing to do about Republican and Democrat. It's more it has to do about liberal and conservative. You got to ask yourself, why does every conservative on this committee, the best I can do is to get 22?
Mr. Chairman.
Well, I think it's a different question. I think the members of the Republican Party should ask yourselves, are you willing to be expansive enough and inclusive to ensure the rights of individuals, despite their racial background, their interests are met, not based on conservative or liberal tendencies, but based on those individuals' needs and the interests that they advocate for.
Will you ask yourselves why I can't get better than 22% from conservatives?
Yeah, sure. We can go down each one of the policy agendas, and we can go through each one of them, and we can make a determination.
I want to
That's a good discussion.
I want to sharpen this discussion because I think it's an important discussion.
Okay, I'm going to go back to the report card. Here we go to my iPad. Since Lindsey, your ass wanted education on this whole deal, this is the report card. This is what it says. Voted in favor of NAACP position, voted against NAACP position. Question mark, did not vote. V, seat was vacant. P, voted present. S, says Speaker of the House. When you go through this grading scale, A, B, C, D, E, if you get an F, it's 0 to 59%. Okay, here's what it says. The NAACP identifies these very specific issues that they are concerned about. This is what it says. How did they vote? On Betsy DeVos, on Jefferson Jeff Beauregard Sessions for Attorney General, on which the NAACP opposed. They opposed Betsy DeVos. They opposed Tom Price. They supported the confirmation of the VA Secretary David Shulkin, Mike Mulvaney for Office of Management and Budget. The NAACP opposed him. Scott Pruitt, the head of the EPA, the NAACP opposed him, requiring federal contractors to comply with basic federal labor and non-discrimination laws. The NAACP opposed the legislation and urged a no vote, overturning regulations requiring public school accountability with historically marginalized groups. The NAACP opposed the legislation and urged a no vote, allowing states to require drug tests for people collecting unemployment insurance. The NAACP opposed the legislation and urged a no vote, requiring federal contractors to maintain accurate records of workplace illness, injury, or death. The NAACP opposed the legislation and urged a no vote. The confirmation of Neil Gorsuch, the NAACP opposed. Repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, opposed by the NAACP. Increase the budget authority for federal health programs. The NAACP supported that amendment and urged a yes vote. Emergency disaster appropriations, that was supported by the NAACP. Allowing forced arbitration by financial servicers. The NAACP opposed that. Allowing tax breaks for tuition to private and religious schools. That was opposed by the NAACP. Assuring every American has health insurance. That was supported. The NAACP supported the motion to instruct conferees and urge an A vote. Tax overhaul. That was opposed by the NAACP. Those were the issues that were very specific in the report card. Lindsey is mad because he got 22%. So we'll go down. Alabama Republican Richard Shelby, 6%. In Alaska, Dan Sullivan got 11%. Lisa Murkowski, Republican, 28%. When Lindsey Graham said 22%, he was speaking to Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee. John McCain, 17%. Jeff Flake, 6%. Tom Cotton, Republican, 11%. John Boozman, 11%. You go to Colorado, Republican Cory Gardner, 11%. If you go down to Marco Rubio, 11%. Go to Georgia, the 2 Republican senators, Johnny Isakson, 11%. David Perdue, 6%. You go to Idaho, 2 Republican senators, both of them 6%. Go to Indiana, Democrat Joe Donnelly, who lost, 89%. Todd Young, 11%. Iowa, 2 Republicans, 11%. Go to Kansas, 2 Republicans, 17-11. Kentucky, 2 Republicans, 11%. Go to Louisiana, 2 Republicans, 17-11%. Go to Maine, Susan Collins, Republican, 33%. If you go down to Mississippi, both Republicans, 11%. Missouri, Roy Blunt, 11%. Montana, Daines, 11%. Ben Sass, 6%. Go to Nevada, David Heller, 17%. If you go to North Carolina, both of them, 11%. North Dakota, 11%. 17%, 6%, 6%, 22%, 11%. Mind y'all, Lindsey Graham, Republican South Carolina, got 22%. Tim Scott, the only black Republican in the United States Senate, and one of only 2 black Republicans in Congress, got 11%, which means Lindsey Graham voted better than a black Republican from South Carolina. Just pointing that thing out. North Carolina, 11%. Rob Portman in Ohio, 17%. Oklahoma, 6%. Pennsylvania, 6%. You can go down the line here. These are all of the numbers. They're based upon how they actually voted. And so, Lindsey Graham, if you want to improve your score with the NAACP, it's very simple. Stop voting against stuff the NAACP supports. It ain't that damn hard. Here's the fundamental problem for Republicans. And he said it. Well, we conservatives, we don't think these things are good. Okay, I'm going to go back to the issue so y'all understand what we're talking about. They don't think it's good for the issue of health care and the Affordable Care Act. And they still yet to present an actual health care plan to replace the Affordable Care Act. They also, the same Congress that got rid of the Obama-era discrimination laws when it came to folks, when it comes to going out and buying cars. They were like, let's make America great again. No, how about not discriminating against black folks when it comes to going and buying a car? Who actually got rid of that? Republicans in the House and the Senate signed into law by Trump. We can go down the line, and the reality is this here. The Republican Party opposes those very issues the NAACP stands for, and then when Lindsey Graham wants to sit there and Mr. High and Mighty, and I just don't understand what's going on. Historically, there was a time when Republicans supported the position of the NAACP. There was a time when the NAACP could go to Republican members of the Senate and the House and know that they were a strong vote for those very issues. But what happened? We do know that Barry Goldwater ran for president in 1964. He opposed the Civil Rights Act of 1964 when he ran for president and completely flipped the party. And then what you had is you had Republicans like William Buckley, who was supportive of civil rights laws, who then flipped and changed, and the party then all totally shifted because of the book that Barry Goldwater released, and that book was co-authored by the daddy of Brent Bozell, who of course runs Media Research Center and the group Newsbusters, a group that is all about so-called liberal bias in media. Why am I laying all of this out for you? Because Lindsey Graham wants to sit there and just go, I just don't understand how y'all just not giving us a good grade. And then Lindsey Graham actually said, what could we do to actually close this? what you can actually do is listen to black people and talk to black people and understand why black people are supporting of those very issues. Maybe what you can do is, Lindsey Graham, show the hell up to the NAACP convention and actually get an understanding of what's going on. I was there in San Antonio this year. I don't recall seeing a single Republican senator or House member. Maybe what you ought to do, Lindsey Graham, is actually drop by some NAACP Freedom Fund dinners in the state of South Carolina to understand. Maybe what you ought to do is go talk to the black people in your state who are NAACP members, and then you can understand what's going on. And then while you at it, maybe when you tell the other Republicans who are on your committee, they should also go talk to the black people who are with NAACP chapters in their states to understand why y'all getting 22 and 11%. This really ain't hard, Lindsey Graham, for you to understand why black people are, why the NAACP gives you failing grades. It is because you are voting against the interests of black people. You're using the power of your position voting against it. What you have to understand is if you're black in North Carolina, you sure as hell are angry with Tom Tillis and Barr, who chose to ignore two black women who were appointed to the federal bench by President Obama. They kept those black women off of that appeals court, and yet the moment they had to put a racist, a voter suppression person on in the name of Thomas Farr, they supported his nomination, and it was sunk because of those racist writings. And then you try to understand, I don't understand how they got 11%. Maybe what you ought to do, Lindsey Graham, is go pick up some historical books on black Republicans to understand the time when Republicans actually gave a damn about civil rights and black people voted for Republicans and not Democrats. Lastly, you say, well, I don't understand how Democrats, how they all got 100%. It's simple. Because they chose to vote the way the NAACP asked them to vote. It ain't that hard. This is why y'all ain't gonna get black votes. This is why black folks are not gonna support you, because damn, you're that clueless about the NAACP because you can't even read the preface of the very report card you were complaining about. Had you not skipped to the scores and read the preface like I did, and read the breakdown of the issues, then it wouldn't have been hard to figure out why y'all looking so clueless. The deconstruction of Senator Lindsey Graham continues with our panel. Derek Johnson, CEO of NAACP. He joins us right now. We also, of course, we have C.J. Pearson, who's on the panel, Republican. She's also with CEO Jordan Management Group. We have A. Scott Bolden, of course, Aloysius, former chair, National Bar Association Political Action Committee, and of course, Greg Carr, Alpha Man. He is head of the Department of Afro-American Studies at Howard University. There, it was just I was watching this video and I was sitting there going, dude, this is not hard.
It really isn't. If you understand that political parties are vehicles for agenda, and there was a period in time where the William F. Buckley branch of the Republican Party merged with the John Birch Society branch of the Republican Party, and they created the movement conservative when they adopted the George Wallace part of the party, which were the Dixiecrats. And they formed a new reality and created a strategy called the silent majority. And they used race as the wedge issue to rally a base to get into power. And their first major candidate was Ronald Reagan.
And also the book that is the blueprint that changed all of this is The Conscience of a Conservative. Go to my iPad, you'll see it. Yes. The Conscience of a Conservative. This is the book that changed it all, that established the foundation of the present-day Republican Party. Go ahead.
Absolutely. And, you know, Conscience of a Conservative, or I like Paul Krugman's book, Conscience of a Liberal, which gives us our perspective of what was taking place. And what was happening then, the intellectuals of the Republican Party, William F. Buckley, they realized they had no feet on the ground. And the John Birch portion of the party, they were upset because of New Deal policies. They didn't want to be taxed. Their corporations didn't want regulations. They wanted taxes. And the Dixiecrats, based on race, had the feet on the ground. And when those three factions merged, then it created a reality where black Republicans had no place because the platforms were being designed by these newly developed think tanks, the Cato Institute, the Heritage Foundation, the Enterprise, and they came up with an approach that really isolated African-American interests, and we've seen a sharp decline started in 1965, but it accelerated around 1971 where we had no place. And so the traditional black Republican clubs in Memphis, my predecessor come out of that black Republican club, Ben Hooks in Memphis, or in Atlanta, because in the South, African Americans, we could not participate in a Democratic primary because they were segregationist parties until we challenged them in '64 out of Mississippi. And once we broke that open, we could actually participate. But prior to that, in order for an African American to vote, to participate, they had to be a Republican. But that group changed the agenda of the Republican Party, and they began an aggressive effort to isolate by using dog whistle politics. They no longer needed to use the N-word. They just had to talk about tax policy differently.
And in fact, Lee Atwater, who of course led the campaign of President George H.W. Bush, who he appointed to head the Republican National Committee, there were recordings that were made of what you just said. He is on tape saying that is exactly what he said. We can't use the N-word anymore.
Gotta be settled.
But there are other things that we can use that say the exact same thing. CJ, again, to sit here and watch Lindsey Graham I just don't understand why we get these low grades.
Lindsey Graham come out of that Dixie Crack lineage. He's out of the South Carolina.
Right.
He probably was a former Democrat, or his family was, and they switched in that early 70s period.
CJ?
Well, speaking of Lindsey Graham and watching your hearing, and thanks for you being here, my question is, when I look at the NAACP report card, I have longtime friends. I came up through Jesse Gooding and others. I am deeply concerned when you talk about education and you don't even have questions about school choice. And what is your position on school choice?
Our position have always been the same: quality education for all children. If you take 10% of the kids out of the system and you created a private reality, there is no evidence that you provide quality education, because what happened to the other 90%?
And my issue
And there's
with that,
no choice in Louisiana under that rubric, because it's all a charter reality, and no better.
some of those schools are performing and some of them are not. But at the end of the day, the NAACP should have school choice as an option on your education.
Okay, hold
card.
on. Wait, hold up. Okay, that's one issue. What else you got?
And I'm going to continue. And I think
First of all, I support school choice, but what else you got? No, what else you got?
When we talk about economic development, all the black Democrats should have an F, because I don't see where there's been any economic development.
All Democrats should have what?
In Congress, because if you look at our districts based on the fact that since, 70s, we've had the Congressional Black Caucus, look at the districts.
Okay, no, hold on. CJ.
Roland.
Here's where you mess up. When you say economic development, okay, please tell me who is trying to completely get rid of the Small Business Development Agency out of the federal budget in 2019. Who proposed that?
It's a realignment of the funds.
No. It's not a realignment. It's complete. No. Hold on. Let me help
It's
you.
a realignment.
No. They want to completely get rid of the only federal agency that is designed to assist minority-owned businesses that was started under a Republican president.
Who was that president?
Nixon. And at the end of the day, again.
So how you want to talk about economic development when you want to get rid of the very agency that is designed to help minority businesses?
And
the Nixons of the party, the Fords of the party, was not a part of this alignment. They actually detest this new realignment of the Lee Atwater Group and the John Birch Society and the Dixiecrats, because they understand that the racial appeal was un-American and it would undermine and subvert democracy as we know it.
And if you want to talk about, if you want to criticize,
what are you doing about
if you want to, if you want to criticize Democrats about economics again,
And I am.
Affirmative action was created by Arthur Fletcher under Richard Nixon.
And we
that
haven't
was
dismantled it.
specifically.
And Arthur Fletcher was a life member and a strong supporter of NAACP, and much
And we
of
haven't
what is
So
dismantled
I'm just trying to understand.
we support
You
it.
want to challenge that, but Republicans
and we-
oppose affirmative action, which is tied to economic development.
No, when you look at economic development, where were those civil rights groups when we talk
Okay.
about the new tax deal around opportune investment zones? Is it on the voter
We support
scorecard? No.
opportunity zones,
Where were
but when
you?
you put in a larger package of redistribution of wealth from the poor back up to the rich.
How is that redistribution?
One second.
How is that
If you
redistribution?
understand,
How is that redistribution of
One
wealth?
second. I'm trying to understand. Hold on. You said opportunity zones.
Yes.
It was passed.
It was passed.
But here's the question.
How's it
Here's the
redistribution?
here's the question. Where the money?
Well, the money is coming from private investors.
Okay.
The money that they bring in
Okay,
offshore.
I got it.
in there
Anyway,
on
Scott
capital
Griggs,
gains.
step in, please.
I don't think there's a whole lot more to be said, but it's a fascinating discussion that you just had about the historical perspective of the Dixiecrats and the space of which Lindsey Graham comes out of. For our viewers, though, can you tie it up with the Southern strategy, with the 1964 Civil Rights Act by Lyndon Baines Johnson? That seems to be at the heart of the base of this discussion.
It's all of it.
It's all of it.
It's all of it.
But,
At the end of the day, Greg, the modern day Republican Party consistently opposes a wide swath of issues that black folks are concerned about. You can specifically mention school choice, fine. You can specifically mention opportunity zones, fine. That's two. What I'm trying to
It's
say
more than
is,
two.
but I just read for you almost 20. And Greg, at the end of the day, Lindsey Graham shouldn't be freaking out as to how he got 22% and why they keep flunking NAACP report card.
Yeah, well, Lindsey Graham has showed us over the last 2 years that he is thoroughly disingenuous and not to be believed. What President Johnson just did and what you just did in laying this out, and I agree with Scott, it was a brilliant kind of a discussion of how the Republican Party came to where they are now. They made a deal with the devil about 50 years ago. And they have done it, and you say this over and over again in this space. The demographics are against them. The time bomb has finally gone off. And what you and Mark did yesterday challenging Lindsey Graham is just taking off another layer of this. It's only a matter of time before the Republican Party implodes if they continue
and
on
voter
this course.
suppression is a big part of that.
Oh, it has to be.
Because they know that their views of the world are in the minority.
That's right. Well,
they have to be.
So, CJ, I want you to answer this. I just want you to answer this here.
That's right.
I want you to answer this. If Lindsey Graham is trying to figure out how his party keeps failing, and he wants to close the gap, why won't Lindsey Graham be the Senate sponsor of the bill to restore Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act, which was struck down in Section 5 in Shelby v. Holder? Why won't Lindsey Graham stand up and say to his party, we must end massive voter suppression, we must stop trying to keep the formerly incarcerated folks from voting? If he wants a higher score, there's a way to get a higher score.
Well,
support those things. What's your response?
And again, we have Senate Resolution 3191 the president just signed on cold cases from the Civil Rights Act.
Yes, which was a bill presented by Senator Doug Jones and Senator Ted Cruz. But I want you to answer.
And he did vote for
I
it.
want you to answer. Hold on.
I'm going to answer
I want
that
you to
question.
answer my specific
I'm
question.
going to get to that. You never let me get to what you
Well, no,
asked
because
me.
you brought up the cold case deal.
You said 20, and I'm giving you an additional
No.
one to get to your
I was
20.
very specific about voter suppression and the Voting Rights Act. Answer that.
And I would like for Mr. Johnson to do a request to meet with the chairman of the Judiciary and discuss this.
We're looking at our calendars now.
And so
But
that's-
Republicans all the
But
time.
hold on, wait,
that is something
hold
that they need to
on.
discuss.
Since you opened that door, Derek, Shelby v. Holder was 2012.
And
I'm not done. This is 2019. In the last 7 years, what has been the response from First of all, because he wasn't chairman of the committee before. What was the response of Grassley in the Senate and Paul Goodlatte in the House when it came to the VRA?
We have yet to have a single judicial hearing of the Senate when they controlled it. We have yet to have an inquiry around all the vote suppression methods. There was not a single Section 2 claim filed by the Justice Department. There have not been an issue raised from the Republican National Committee. There has not been a true desire to address Russia's interference in our election by seeking to suppress black votes and subvert democracy.
Let me put a pin
And
right
at
there.
the end of the day, when you talk about
everybody at home.
maybe you all should get more black Republicans to come and talk to to advocate.
But here's the deal, though. Let me unpack that. First of all, black Republicans call for their own meeting.
You'd be surprised.
Now, no, look, wait a minute. Now, everybody watching. Let me just sort of break it down even further what Derek just said. I'm going to try to narrow this thing down, what Derek just said, to my question. They ain't done a damn thing. On the issue of voting and voting rights and the Voting Rights Act, the Republican Party in the last 7 years ain't done a damn thing.
But suppress.
In fact, Goodlatte
That's right.
refused, he said it, refused to even have a hearing.
That's right.
You have Sensenbrenner, white Republican from Wisconsin, who actually had a bill that had about 20 or 30 co-sponsors. The next Congress, it dropped down to about 5 co-sponsors. The next Congress, it dropped down to 1. That's your party, CJ. So if you want better votes, support issues that black people care about.
And at that time, when Sensenbrenner was there, myself and other black Republicans, yes, there are plenty of us that do have some control and some influence.
Wait. Go ahead. No, Scott, go ahead. Okay, you and some other black Republicans.
And those we advocated. We have not had a meeting. Look, that's as far as it went. We've not had a meeting at all with any other leadership. We have not had any other meetings with any other leadership within the NAACP.
No, Scott, stop. No, hold on.
Let me finish.
Hold up. I want to know. You said you and some other black Republicans.
And we were instrumental in having that hearing with Sensenbrenner. Since then,
what hearing?
When he supported that, we were instrumental.
Hold on, on what hearing?
On Section 4.
Wait a minute. On what hearing?
On voters' rights.
And what hearing was that? Because Goodlatte would not allow there to be a hearing. That was a discussion.
We were supportive. Read my lips. Supportive.
Stop.
We were supportive of having the hearing.
Hold up. You just said, I just want to be clear about it home.
We were supportive of having the hearing.
Black Republicans were supportive of having a hearing. Was there a hearing?
No.
Which means they wouldn't listen to y'all.
Right.
So hold on. No, Scott, wait a minute.
It doesn't have to deal with her. We were supportive.
If the Republicans won't even listen to black Republicans.
They listen to us.
Well, actually,
hold on. They listen to y'all? Did y'all get a hearing?
But, you know, a piece that.
No, we didn't get a hearing.
So, hold on,
but it doesn't mean that we didn't get a hearing.
You just said they listened to us.
Yes, they do.
Did y'all get a hearing?
The answer is no.
Y'all couldn't even get a hearing.
Doesn't make a difference.
Not a bill.
Doesn't mean that we don't have any influence.
CJ, can you at least admit that the black Republicans of today are different than the black Republicans we heard Derek talk about, like Ben Hooks, or we hear Roland talk about, Ed Brooks. Well, no, I'm thinking particularly about a meeting called the Claremont meeting, where they basically recruited Clarence Pendleton, Clarence Thomas. They grew a crew of house Negroes that they can move around like they wanted.
And we have some of them, and some of them we have
but
very different
opinions. Other than, who are these black Republicans who are connected to the previous generations?
All I'm saying is this here. CJ.
And some of us are here.
CJ.
We are here.
CJ, Colin Powell.
We are here.
CJ, Colin Powell.
He ain't the only black
went
Republican.
to North Carolina and invited by then Governor Pat McCrory, and Colin Powell stood in front of him and other Republicans and said, the voter suppression laws that you are supporting in this state are an offense to black people and should not be implemented. And the North Carolina Republican Party said, damn you and your 4 stars. We're going to pass. Hold on, CJ. The Republican Party of North Carolina Twitter handle, NCGOP, passed the most oppressive voter suppression law in America that was struck down by federal courts was not even looked at by the Supreme Court, and those federal courts said they had laser-like precision of Republicans targeting black voters. Lindsey Graham didn't say a damn thing about that law.
And
Lindsey Graham said nothing. And that's why you get a failing grade from the NAACP.
If the NAACP had bothered to
member of NAACP.
Lindsey Graham didn't say. Hold on one second. Lindsey Graham didn't say he wanted a higher score. He said he didn't know why he didn't have a higher score. It's very different.
That's right.
All I'm saying is, at the end of the day, you keep playing games on this.
That's right.
You keep playing games on this. You keep playing games on this.
Are they effective? Do they have power? Can they effectuate some sensibility?
Can y'all get a hearing?
Party?
CJ, remember in 2000.
And I think during the 2016 convention, it was Mr. Hillary Shelton that I invited
We
to
come
the
to every
platform.
convention.
So-
we are at
and
every
so-
Republican convention. We're at every Democratic convention because we have an agenda and we seek to have that in the platform.
And
As of yet, over the last 20 years, the Republicans have had a stonewall of adopting any of our platforms for the agenda.
Some of your
Because they don't
platforms
agree with the
platform.
platform. Hold on. In order for black people to join the Republican Party or leave the Democratic Party, right? And I'm a Democrat, and the Democratic Party stands for abortion rights, health care rights, human rights, civil rights, reasonable gun control, right?
Voting
Can the
rights.
Republican Party, voting rights, that's number 6. You can keep
Kinda
going.
important.
Right.
Now, for me to leave the Democratic Party and to go to the Republican Party, can the Republican Party assure me of these 7 things that will represent my
Hell
interests as
no!
a
Give
person
me
of
one
color?
of them.
I want 5
Don't say 7.
Hold on.
Did
Can
you
they
get
do
everything
one of
from-
them?
Did you get everything from your woman?
They don't
No.
have
Wow.
3 or 4.
Well, hell,
There's
I do.
negotiating.
1 or
Oh,
2.
no, don't.
There's
do it, Roland.
negotiating.
Don't do it,
is,
Roland.
I don't have to negotiate to get in the party. So it's
Yeah.
unrealistic that any African American and their community and their interests are ever going to be served by the Republican Party.
Look, we got-
or go to the Republican Party.
Whether
do
you
this right
agree, whether you voted for President Trump, we've gotten some headway within our community. We got criminal justice
Because
reform.
of Donald Trump.
You got 800,000 federal workers out of work because of one mad man
and one mad woman.
Okay, put them both together then, him
What
and his
is
wife.
she mad about?
I know you ain't talking about
You don't
Nancy
want to build a
Pelosi.
wall like
Let
65% of the
me
rest
do
of the
this
country.
here. Let me-
Doesn't want to build a wall.
And all those black women in Los Angeles that's
You gonna do
complaining
those
about.
Let me do this right here. Hold up,
No.
Scott, CJ, Greg, Derek. Y'all, this is real simple. Y'all, this real simple. This real simple. We started this whole discussion off Lindsey Graham trying to understand why Republicans get failing grades. We've laid it out very clearly. If Republican Party would like to get a better grade, let's start on voting. Let's see you oppose voter suppression. CJ, let me know when y'all black Republicans actually get a meeting or a hearing. Because if y'all ain't gonna get a hearing, they surely as hell ain't gonna talk to other black people. And y'all can keep inviting the NAACP to cute little receptions and to the conventions, and y'all can invite them to nice little gatherings. But at the end of the day, if you stand in opposition to black folks voting, y'all gonna catch some hell. I'm gonna go to a break right now. I'll be back on Roland Martin Unfiltered. You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it. All right, folks, many of us trying to take our health seriously in 2019. Folks want to get healthy. Folks want to get well. Folks want to feel a lot better and lose some weight. Well, one of the ways to do that is working with one of our partners, the folks at D-Herbs. Yesterday, of course, we talked to the CEO, Dr. A.D. Dolphin. The D-Herb Full Body Cleanse is a great way for you to feel better. And, of course, look, many of us, how we eat, how we abuse our bodies, we ate all kind of stuff during the holidays, processed foods, fried foods, you name it. And so what this cleanse does is just clean out the toxic buildup in your system. I've been doing it this is like day 12, and so yeah, I still want a good piece of chicken or some steak. But I can't. But between the raw vegetables and between the cleanses, that's exactly what it does. And so what we can all do, the Herbs cleanse together. You can go to therbs.com, use the promo code Roland for a discount at checkout. That's the letter therbs.com, or you can call 866-4DHERBS, 866-4DHERBS. That's 866-4DHERBS, and use the promo code Roland. All right, folks, we want you to do that. I got folks, hold up, go back. Derek! Okay, I don't know why they released Derek from the chair because I did have to ask Derek a couple of quick questions with regards to the Women's March. Derek, I need y'all to go to see if Derek has walked out down the elevator yet. So, yeah, go get Derek. I mean, don't be releasing folks from the show unless you ask me first. Because, what, he going to the bathroom? We got a plan here? We're still waiting on Tamika Mallory to get here to talk about the Women's March. So we're waiting on her. We got several things we want to cover. And so I want to see if okay, so Derek, I got to ask you this here before you say, because you're about to leave, right? Yeah, okay, you're on your way out. So I got put the microphone back on. Yeah. What, CJ ran you away? All right, so I got to ask you this real quick, so I want to get this. So 2 days ago, we reported that the NAACP pulled out as sponsors of the Women's March.
Not true.
Not true?
Not true. I have no idea where they came from. Tamika just walked in. I absolutely support the Women's March and the principle it stands for, but more importantly, I support Tamika Mallory because she has been a young leader with a clear voice for African Americans. So I don't know where this concept, where this report come from. I'm one of the signers of the letter in support of her.
I'm going to talk about that in a minute, though. Again, there was a letter that a group of black women signed and also allies. You signed that letter in support of Tamika Mallory. She's been under lots of criticism from folks, people claiming that she has not condemned Minister Farrakhan, his comments that are anti-Jewish. Folks have been attacking her left and right. She was on The View, of course, earlier this week as well. Many folks did not like her appearance on there. Your thoughts about that, again, the attack that she is under from critics?
But, during this time of intolerance, I don't want to conflate where we are and what we need to do. There are issues that African Americans need to address. There are issues that women need to address. I'm laser focused on those things. Our youth director is scheduled to speak at the March, Tiffany Lofton, who you know have been on the show many times. So I don't want to conflate off some ancillary issue that have nothing to do with the NAACP, where we're from. But more importantly, I'm not going to denounce somebody from our community because they have a strong voice. Whether I agree with the opinion or not, she's advocating for African Americans, and I support us being us, fighting for us.
So NAACP is a sponsor. And I don't know how that works in terms of what's called a sponsor, but basically you're saying NAACP is still supportive and never withdrew from supporting the Women's March.
Our position from day one has not changed to the day. I don't even know what a sponsor means. We're not writing a check. We never committed to write a check, but we had committed to make sure we had a voice in that protest, because many of the issues that's been raised are our issues as well, and our issues mean black issues. And we got to be clear and consolidated with our voice.
All right, so that's why I call you back, so you can go ahead and leave.
I can leave now.
Appreciate it. You can leave now. You leave now. So I want to get that on the record before you left, and so appreciate that. Appreciate that.
Be very clear. I will not be the one to malign one of our sisters. We've seen this before.
Brother. Yes,
this is a playbook that we've seen over and over from 1950s to 1960s, 70s.
Teach, Derek.
I've seen this, so I'm not a part of that chorus. I don't even know if there's a true chorus, because if our name could be put on something that we never knew anything about, I wonder how real this list is to start with.
All right. Hold on. No. Here's the deal. Hold on. I got it. Because Tamika was supposed to be a little earlier, so we had this all time. So Derek has to go. I'm going to do this story dealing with GM, then we're coming back to the Women's March story. So, Derek, I appreciate it. Thanks a bunch. But I wanted to get that in while you were here in person. All right, folks, an absolutely disgusting and infuriating story out of Toledo, Ohio. Last night, Sarah Seitner of CNN broke the story of brutal out in the open racism at a GM plant there in Toledo. Current and former employees of GM are suing the company for tolerating a racially hostile work environment where use of the N-word was common. Here's a portion of Seitner's report. Now, the two men she interviews were supervisors at the plant with six-figure salaries before the constant racism forced them out.
When did you notice overt racism?
Well, when an employee that was under me, he told me that back in the day, a person like me would have been buried with a shovel.
He said what to you?
That was a death threat, and I was told to push that to the side.
Boyd says he reported the incident.
He admitted to it, and I was pulled to the side and said, you know, if you want to build relationships here, you know, you just let things go, he'll be all right.
But he says the threats got worse. Were you afraid for your life?
Definitely. That's why I left.
All right, folks, GM denied there was such a work environment, but the Ohio Civil Rights Commission, after a 9-month investigation, found that GM did allow a racially hostile environment. And these are pictures from the plant. Ray Wood, former president of United Auto Workers Local 14 at the plant, and the current president of the Toledo NAACP, also filed a separate discrimination suit. He joins us now from Toledo. So, Ray, glad to have you here on the show. How does it make you feel to, on one hand, GM denies it, then all of a sudden it's absolutely proven that what took place, this rampant racism, was true?
Yeah, Martin, thanks for having me. Absolutely. They can deny it all they want to. I lived it. I was in that plant as well every day, as well as at the hall and in the community. You know, we tried to tell them as things were happening, when the nooses started to occur, when the swastikas, when the white power and the white only signs started to appear. We tried to tell management then that they needed to get out in front of it, that they needed to communicate with the membership, even if they and do an investigation. Even if they couldn't find the culprit, which sometimes is difficult to do, but we told them that they needed to make sure that they didn't create or continue to create a hostile work environment. Well, they didn't take our word for it. Me being the president of the local chapter NAACP, I do a lot of training. We do mandatory training on Title VII and discrimination. So I wasn't just pulling something out my back pocket. I was telling them what I exactly knew that they should be doing. And I even told them this, Martin. I told them, if you don't, I wouldn't be offended if you didn't take my word for it, or if you didn't trust me, go to your legal authorities, get some legal advice and direction from the corporation about how you should handle this. Well, they didn't take that. They didn't take my advice, nor did they try to get the legal advice to my understanding, because those things continue to happen. March 22nd, 2017, they found the noose. And then again, May 2nd, 2017, they found another noose. And then another noose was found in which an employee was disciplined on June the 2nd. The problem was that was a 3-month period. They did not communicate with the membership. Now, they lied on CNN last night when they said that they shut the plant down and had conversations with the employees. That's not true. The conversations that they had 3 months later was that there were regularly scheduled quarterly meetings that they had, and at that time they never said anything about the nooses, the swastikas, the whites only signs. They just talked about harassment, and that's where they were found culpable of not securing a safe, non-threatening, non-hostile work environment.
And we're talking about folks who had high-paying jobs, who were forced out, and I mean that has deep economic ramifications.
Oh, absolutely. Though now, Derek and Marcus, they were salary people, and I'm a union. I was the union president. They have a different story altogether. Yep, they walked away from their jobs. With mine, the people on the floor, the people that elect the leadership, they were. It was as intense and as confrontational as I'd ever seen it. They let that climate, that environment, get to a boiling point where people were going after each other. It absolutely became a black and white atmosphere inside the plant. And those are good paying jobs, but you don't want to stay in a situation where you're not sure about if the person to the right of you or to the left of you, the person that you're going out of parking lot, because those nooses mean something. Those nooses and the swastikas. It wasn't just that. I mean, they were, and they continue to this day, Martin. They continue to this day. Just a couple of weeks ago, they spray painted on my name and one of the other guys the lawsuit, and I think I sent that picture to you where it says that Mark Edwards and Ray Wood were, we don't the NAACP buried the N-word, but they called us the N-word, and that all colored should be lynched. There was all kinds of stuff being said, and we knew that they use a name called Dan, and Dan is dumb ass N-words, and there was comments made by members in that plant, and there was no repercussions about we were making too big of a deal out of the incidents. After all, there's never been a black person lynched that didn't deserve it. This is the type of atmosphere, and these are the type of comments and statements that were made. Yeah.
Well, Ray, we certainly appreciate you joining us, breaking these things down. We certainly will keep covering this story and keep us abreast of how your lawsuit goes.
I certainly will. Thanks for taking the interest, Mark.
I appreciate it. Thanks a lot. I'm going to quickly go to our panel here. This is I keep telling people, this is Ohio, Midwest state, labor folks, to understand how those folks think. It shows up at the ballot box as well.
Well, I'm not as concerned about how they think.
I am.
Forgive me. I'm trying to figure out where the lawyers are and where they've been for the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years. GM is a multinational Fortune 10 company with a huge legal department. They can afford and hire any law firm in this world. They do very often. And I got to tell you, in the 21st century, they've got evidence of a hostile work environment, pictures of it. And it's unbelievable that no one was sent in to do an internal investigation, do a report, and then begin the counseling or moving people in, moving people out. Because if you want to be affirmative in your investigation, then you lean in to resolve it. For example, those white signs, whites only signs, right? Somebody wrote that, right? You take a picture of that, and then you go through every file in that location.
Yes, sir.
You go through every file and you compare it. And then you'll find the culprit, and then you remove them from the circumstance. If that wasn't done, it's going to be a very difficult and challenging case and a strong one for the plaintiffs.
Well, GM says they're doing that, but they also earlier said that there was no racism.
But how long did it take to get to that point?
I was going to say very quickly, Sherrod Brown reelected out there into the U.S. Senate from Ohio with a healthy plurality of the vote. So some of these people split their tickets. They can vote for Sherrod Brown, who says he may run for president on this notion that he can talk to the working class whites. These are the same white people who voted for him who also voted for Donald Trump. Meaning what? They can separate their economic issues from their deep racism. That is a serious problem in this country.
Racism is deep in the North. That's what this shows off.
Not
just the South. Chicago is still a very segregated city.
Absolutely,
no question.
Well, it also shows that unions who typically support democratic causes are not always favorable to African Americans. Because in this particular case, being that the union did not do their own internal investigation to address a supervisor who was also union, there is a problem.
He filed a lawsuit.
No, I'm talking about the white gentleman.
Hold on, wait a minute.
They did not go against the white gentleman.
Wait a minute.
I can't believe she said that. Let me do it.
No, you can't do it. No, you can't do it.
No, I'm talking about
CJ,
No,
CJ.
I'm just being honest.
CJ.
I'm being honest.
If you are going to make a claim, I really need you to be specific with your claim. What is factually correct, CJ, is that unions as a collective traditionally supports Democrats, yet police unions, yet fire unions, they support Republicans. Also, CJ, trade unions typically support Republicans. White union members who live in places like Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Michigan, and Wisconsin also typically support Republicans. And so you can't make on this show the claim that unions traditionally support Democrats if you don't specify what specific unions. And this issue is not a union issue. It's a white union member issue, because the operative word in white union member issue ain't union, it's white.
No, it is union, because the union
is white
union. Through labor laws.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. All right. All I know is it's here. Republicans hate unions, but they all want the support of police unions when they run. Republicans can't stand teachers unions. They can't stand SCI. They can't stand AFSCME, but they sure as hell love Fraternal Order of Police. They sure as hell love the Sheriff's Association. And so please don't try that, CJ. You better be specific, because what I also know is that trade unions have shut out black people for decades from the economic opportunities. And guess who was the first union
and
group?
they white Democrats.
Wait a minute. What was the first union group who met with Donald Trump after he won because he was promising billions for infrastructure? Trade unions. That is a fact. Let's move to our next story. Earlier I talked about with Derek Johnson about the NAACP and the Women's March, and of course it is taking place this weekend. They have been embroiled in drama while they also are still organizing. Of course, 3 years ago they had some 500 plus sponsors. Different reports say that's now down to 250 or 200. Earlier this week, the Democratic Party pulled out as a sponsor. There were media reports that the NAACP pulled out as well. Well, Derek Johnson just answered that for us. And you had lots of criticism, folks going after the leaders of the march, including my next guest, Tamika Mallory, who joins us right now. I'm glad to have you in studio.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is you on The View on Monday. Meghan McCain, others came after you. Folks have been demanding that you condemn Minister Louis Farrakhan. First, how has the last several months been for you and Bob Bland and Carmen Perez and Linda Sarsour? Certainly has not been an easy time.
Yeah, well, first of all, let's put it in proper context. For 2 years, and you know this because we've talked about it a number of times, we've been under attack. So it wasn't just the Louis Farrakhan issue. We've been dealing with issues and this sort of mounting pressure for a number of reasons since day one. We came in, there was pressure, and it continues to be. And we knew that getting closer to the march, there was going to be an increase in demands, an increase in a power grab, because that's really what's happening. There is a power grab. There are people who are trying to remove the current leadership so that they can take over the organization. And they're using whatever it is that they need to be able to do it. You know?
The group Tablet, I mean, this media entity, they put this story out. A lot of people have been talking about it, saying that from the outset, you and others were attacking Jewish women in the group at some of the first meetings. Your response to this massive story that they did, that basically said you and others are absolutely anti-Semitic.
Right. So we walked into a room, first meeting that we ever had, just meeting folks, don't know you, just show up, how are you doing? Hi, did you know that the Jews controlled the slave trade? That's what we supposedly did. It didn't happen. It just didn't happen. It doesn't make sense.
Of course not.
It's not how we talk. It didn't, you know, it just didn't happen. So that's the bottom line. I mean, I wouldn't even waste time. I wouldn't even waste time getting into all of the details around it, but it didn't happen. And again, what folks have not asked is like, who are these other people making these claims? Where there are people who we asked to leave the leadership of the Women's March for different reasons, and they have started a competing organization. And then all of a sudden they come up 3 years later with these allegations that we walked into a very first meeting telling them that Jews, you know, controlled everything, and that, you know, and that we were just the most anti-Semitic people in the world. And the truth of the matter is, what really happened is that the first piece was, and it was a legitimate question from the Jewish community around my association to the Nation of Islam. There were people who had legitimate questions. They wanted to understand, and we were having that dialogue. This happened last February at Savior's Day, which we all know is the highest holy day for the Nation of Islam.
For folks who don't know, what is that relationship?
I work with the Nation of Islam on a number of issues, particularly gun violence. That's been one issue that I've worked very closely with the nation. And I mean, the bottom line is I'm a black person in America who's an activist, who's been out here doing this work for over 20 years. So if you didn't meet the Nation of Islam while you were out here doing your work,
you were not in the black community.
I'm not sure what black community you work in.
Right.
And I work specifically with people who are some of the most marginalized. You know, from covering things that we've done in the past. We work in prisons, we work on street corners. My own son's father was murdered. So I come from I'm not a celebrity activist. I'm not a Twitter activist. I'm not a TV activist. I'm the real kind. I do the real work. And when you do the real work, there are complex issues and there are many groups that you meet with that you may or may not agree with all of their philosophies. But the Black experience is extremely complex. And, sometimes you work with a lot of different people. So that's the relationship that I have. And, and I appreciate the Nation of Islam for its role in the Black community because it has been an important one, period. So just to sort of go back to what I think, has been going on, is that there was this initial issue around me going to the Nation of Islam event. Minister Farrakhan has made statements that have been very, very, very hard and hurtful to people in the Jewish community and in the gay community. And there were questions that Jewish people had. And I was willing, and that the folks in the LGBTQ community had. And I was willing to sit down and explain it and talk and work. And so these people, I believe, sat back and watched it and said, okay, let's see if this kills them. And then when that didn't work, they tried a little bit, they know that I'm a person who supports the people of Palestine. So they shifted their focus on that and tried, let's see if that kills them. And when none of that happened, and they could not work the guilt by association factor well enough, that, they couldn't just say because you were in the room, you were inherently anti-Semitic. The next thing was, let's lie and put it directly in their mouths so we can make it stick for real. So that's when they began to pile on with these other accusations.
Have you talked about the comments that he has made? Have you ever had a conversation with him where you said, brother, you're wrong?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we've had conversations where I've said, I don't agree about this particular, your view in this particular area. And there have been times when he has said, I don't agree with the organizing strategy that I may, be following. His position, particularly around voting, has been a point of contention in terms of what the Nation of Islam believes and what we believe.
Because the Nation of Islam does not believe in voting.
They don't believe that voting is the answer. There are some people who vote, but it is not their overall strategy for Black liberation.
So the reason I asked you that question in terms of, have you talked to him or challenged him on his statements, and you just said you have, is that Cornel West has been very vocal about Farrakhan being a friend, calling him a brother, but writing in books and talking publicly how he has challenged Farrakhan. And I'm saying that because it's interesting when I listen to people who talk about this, who actually don't have any clue about Black people, who don't actually understand that. But yet Cornel West is still booked on television shows all across the country, teaches, speaks all across the country, and folks have not said, how dare you associate yourself with Farrakhan, even though he has said, I love my brother, but we've had hours and hours and hours of vigorous battles over his anti-Jewish, anti-LGBT comments. As you have gone through this, so for instance, when you were on The View on Monday, and Meghan McCain kept asking you, do you denounce Farrakhan? Do you believe that what your critics want is they want to hear you say, I denounce Louis Farrakhan? Go ahead.
I've been asked by a number of people to do that. I mean, I've been asked to condemn, to denounce, and I have said and will continue to say that I do not agree. My position, to be very clear, is that America has condemned and denounced Black people for far too long. I am not going to participate in using that type of language to describe anyone in my community, and particularly someone who has been engaged in saving the lives of young Black men that I have to work with every single day. I go into prisons. I work with young men who have actually committed some heinous acts, things that I definitely don't agree with, but I don't come outside and condemn them, or else I can't go back inside and work with them. The men who killed my son's father, I have never condemned them or denounced them. Am I hurt? Does it hurt me? Are we angry as a family? Absolutely. But we haven't condemned them, because I believe in the work that I've been doing that the person on the shooting side of the gun and the person who's the victim both deserve the love and attention of people who claim to be Black liberation fighters. That's just who I am. So you can't take that from me, because one thing that is 100% sure is that I cannot separate with my skin color. I can't separate with who I am walking into the Women's March space. That's just not who I am. And if intersectionality is going to represent all of us, then people have to be willing to understand that what is important is who I am. Louis Farrakhan, Minister Farrakhan, is not a part of the Women's March. He has not been at any meetings. He's never spoke on any of our programs. He's not helping to write the policy agenda that we're releasing tomorrow. He is not involved in any way. And in fact, the infantilism of we tell you what to say and you must be using his words, but yet everyone is fighting for women to have agency over their bodies and their minds and their ability to speak for themselves. And yet people are going to take the words of a man and make them something that I'm supposed to die for on the cross. I'm not going to do that. I reject that. I don't agree with statements that Minister Farrakhan has made in a number of areas, and that is okay, because I don't agree with stuff that Roland Martin says, and we know you don't really care, but you know, I don't agree. And I mean, and not to make light of it. No. Seriously, there are times when people have challenged me, where I have to challenge others in our community, but I also understand the sensitivities around denouncing Black men, denouncing Black people, and the denouncement and condemnation that has happened to us for far too long.
You talked about releasing this tomorrow. The event is taking place on Saturday. Do you, Carmen Perez, Linda Sarsour, Bob Bland, do you have any intention on walking away and quitting the Women's March, this organization?
No, we are serving out our terms. We are but we have term limits based upon our bylaws.
How long is the term?
And we're serving out our term. They would love to take that and chop it up and have that all over the place. Yeah. We're serving out our terms, and we came here to do a job. And if you look at the body of work that the Women's March has produced, we have held protests around some of the most important moments in the last 2 years since this administration has been in place. We've been one of the leading resistance groups and the most intersectional movement in the world in terms of ensuring also that marginalized people are in the sort of like the secret sauce to the conversation. We keep on making sure that we bring up Shakisha Clemens, who was attacked by police officers in a Waffle House. So we won't allow people to talk about any issue, not reproductive rights, not one issue without looking at how it impacts people who come from oppressed and marginalized communities. And that is the reason why there is a continuous onslaught. Again, because you got to be real clear. There are people who have legitimate questions and concerns, and those people deserve the time and attention and affection of the Women's March, because only through that will we be able to really move forward as a strong movement. But that is not all that we are seeing happen here. And anyone who believes that all this is just people asking questions, they're wrong. Because Meghan McCain asked 6 questions at once. She never stopped to allow me to answer any. And I don't even want to use the wrong word right now, but the nerve of people to believe that because she did all that I was supposed to just answer her as she said. So Massa, you get to tell me how to respond. That's not going to happen. And if people can't understand the implications of a white woman yelling at me and trying to badger me into saying what she says, even if I wanted to say it, I wouldn't have said it the way in which she was speaking to me.
That's right. Question from each panel. I'll start with CJ, go to Scott, then Greg.
You know, it is a very complex issue, but it can't be an issue that's one for one side and one for the other. So today you had media condemn Republicans who met with the young gentleman who is a Holocaust denier who used to be a reporter from Breitbart. And they came out and spoke eloquently about why they should not have met with this gentleman. But this gentleman was not talking about anything about other than DNA and genetic codes. So now we're at this particular piece for this Women's March. And I think it should not be a double standard. I think at this particular time, those who are advertisers and the belief of anti-Semitic views and the LGBT community, they should have a right to pull back the funding based on some of the members in leadership. They should have a right to pull back funding from the NAACP if they choose to participate, being that you do have Jewish Americans who co-founded the NAACP. Those are my comments.
Tamika, you want to respond to that?
Based upon what?
Based on the fact that some of your leadership has said some horrible things about
Who said that? And who
Linda.
gets to, who gets to choose? I'm just asking you a question. Who said that we said it? Did you hear it?
No, hold on. I'll ask you. What comments were made that you said were hateful and harmful?
Linda, the young Muslim lady.
Linda Sarsour.
Linda
Said what?
Sarsour. She has said through Twitter some things that have been disparaging.
Like what?
And a two-state and about Israel. So my thing is, I'm just saying, I'm going by what I'm seeing on social media.
You're saying that
yes.
You believe that because Linda Sarsour has said that there should be a two-state solution, you're calling that hateful?
No, but not just a two-state solution, but she's also advocated violence against Israel and been supported.
That never happened.
And that's
so tell me the exact
Show me the
quote.
proof.
Show me the quote.
I'll go through and look, but this is what I've seen and read on social media.
No, wait.
Let me just
hold on. You're saying you have seen and read where Linda Sarsour has advocated for violence against Israel.
So
I need to see the proof. Tamika, go ahead.
So the bottom line is, this is what happens. They start lying. Never happened. Linda Sarsour has probably said, and I don't know for sure what tweet or whatever she may be mentioning, because I know she didn't advocate violence against anyone. Linda Sarsour is one of the most beautiful women I've ever worked with, and she doesn't advocate for violence against anyone. What she has said is that if you are killing a particular group of people, that there may come a time when those people retaliate. And she has said, let us figure out how to heal everyone so that there is no bloodshed. That's what she said. She's not advocating for violence against anyone. So that's just a lie. And I'm just going to tell you the truth.
So if you make that claim, show me the proof, and I'll put it on the screen. But I want to see the proof. Scott.
Yeah, Tamika, I think your presentation today, I couldn't have done it better in front of a jury. I mean, it was just real and thoughtful and appropriate. I'm always concerned when our white brothers and sisters call for us to condemn our leaders and to denounce them, when we don't require them to do the same for their leaders, like from the Nazi Party or from the White Nationalist Party. We got a president that won't do it and can't do it comfortably without reading it, right? So we are not a monolithic people, black people. We are not homogeneous in our political and economic thought. We are complex, and we got complex issues, just like you said. And so, why isn't, I guess for me, the question, why isn't it enough, in your opinion, why isn't it enough to disagree with Louis Farrakhan or to disagree with other black leaders who are working hard in the community at the grassroots level because of our complex issues as a community, right? Why isn't that enough? Why isn't it in your piece enough for them, in your opinion?
Well, I think that because of, I think is the litmus test that exists, that has been in place for a long time to figure out ways to tear black leaders down.
And
so
to
whenever to separate us from one another, to create confusion. And so whenever they feel like one of us is actually gaining in terms of building a real sustainable movement, they begin to use these different tactics to try to discredit you. And, the litmus test that around Minister Farrakhan has existed for a long time.
Right. Absolutely.
So I think that's one of the reasons.
Greg Carr.
Yes, I want to echo. I want to thank you, Tamika, for being, not only for your work, but for being courageous enough to take this stand. As you said, they didn't want Martin Luther King to meet with Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and there he is sitting in his living room like, I don't care. But that takes great courage. For the young people in particular who are watching this, who will be participating in the march this weekend, some of whom may be on the fence because of propaganda, because social media and technology has disrupted everything. So like you say, you got Twitter activists and people who wouldn't bust a grape in a fruit salad, who've never done anything, gonna put up the courage to talk about you, we call it the fake courage. So the young people watching this, what would you say to them to help them sort through all this confusion and get past it to this black unity? And I say this as somebody who has met Minister Farrakhan, attended many meetings, who understands that the least of these, the rejected by this society, there's a reason why they gravitate to the Nation of Islam, because they are not turned away. You talk about marginalized people. What would you say to those young people who are watching you now, who have seen you lay this out, and who are a lot more clear, but still may need a little bit more to understand what they should do next?
I would tell them, first of all, they need to make sure they're studying their history, that there's always been tension in movements. There's always been confusion, and in fact, white supremacy is set up in a way that it is supposed to create confusion so that people are not able to get focused and to unify. So what is happening right now is that there is a power grab that seeks to take away your voice, really. That these young people need to know that they are the energy. They are the energy that is needed in this moment to keep this movement going. My job is to be here to facilitate a place for them to have a voice. It is not for me to be the leader that is exalted, that everyone is going to love, because I'm definitely flawed. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm certainly not going to do everything right. But this movement is about all of us. And so young people who are watching need to know that they're showing up not for Tamika Mallory, not for Linda Sarsour, not for any of those things. You're showing up for yourself. You're showing up because your parents may be a part of those who are not working right now in this government shutdown. You're showing up because we're releasing a policy agenda tomorrow that deals with gun violence, that deals with immigration policy, that deals with issues, health care and reproductive justice, You're showing up on behalf of yourself. You go to movement spaces to get more courage and more resources and information to go out and be a stronger movement, and to be a stronger leader in your local community, but not to be there just because you like one person. So that's what I would say.
I want to bring in Adam Sir of The Atlantic. And the reason I'm doing that, because Adam, back in March of 2018, you wrote a piece. Here we go to my iPad. You wrote a piece, and it was called "Why Tamika Mallory Won't Condemn Farrakhan." To those outside the black community, the Nation of Islam's persistent appeal, despite its bigotry, can seem incomprehensible. You wrote it from a perspective of being black and Jewish. Can you, just your thoughts about all of this drama that we have seen over the last year or 2 years?
I think that, when I wrote that piece, what I was really trying to do was, rather than tell anybody how they should respond, was to explain both sides of this conflict to each other. And in particular, I felt as though there were a lot of people, a lot of white and Jewish people who found the idea that anybody would associate with Farrakhan really incomprehensible. And so I just wanted to explain why that would be the case, why someone would do that. I think, unlike the Republican Party, the Democratic Party and the left in general is diverse. It's made up of a lot of different types of people. And whenever you have a diverse coalition, you're going to have friction. There's going to be conflict because different people have different experiences. They have different priorities. They have different traumas. And I think that what we've seen around the Women's March is a result of that friction. The optimistic side of this is that the fact that the coalition is diverse means that there are people in that coalition who can negotiate and work it out amongst each other. The problem with the Republican Party, as it is constituted at this moment, is that it's so not diverse that there's nobody within that coalition to say, hey, you shouldn't treat these people like that. Whereas what you see with the Women's March is, you have one side saying, this hurts me, I don't like this, and another side saying, I didn't understand that, and I'm going to learn from it.
What's also interesting when you talked about these coalitions and the left, but if you actually, first of all, any of the people who've actually listened to Minister Farrakhan, Nation of Islam, they will you would think you're actually listening to a Republican talk. I remember at the 20th anniversary of the Million Man March, the point when Minister Farrakhan brought up this line of sisters, and he was praising their beauty and their ability to cook and to sew. And I guarantee you, there's some sisters who were sitting there like, I know he is not doing this. And I think that's also part of this failure of people who just really have no clue about black people to understand how black folks can listen to Farrakhan or Elijah Muhammad or Malcolm X and go, okay, that's BS, but I'm gonna listen to this.
Right, and I think Farrakhan's ideology is actually pretty conservative. It's
very
self-sufficiency and economic independence and black capitalism, really. And I think that from the outside, people make this mistake of thinking black equals left when that's really not the case, and it's especially not the case with the Nation of Islam, which is a fundamentally conservative organization in the small c sense of the term.
But I also want to read this. One of the books, I've been talking about this for the last couple of years, is Dr. King's book, Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community? Which, if anybody reads this book, what we have had to deal with the last 51 years since he was killed, I mean, he literally lays out in 1967. But here's a passage, and I would love to get your thoughts, Adam, and I want to bring in my panel and Tamika as well on this. This is what Dr. King, okay, let me say it again. Everybody in the back. This is what the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. wrote in 1967 when this book was published. He said, quote, "While I strongly disagree with their separatist black supremacy philosophy, I have nothing but admiration for what our Muslim brothers have done to rehabilitate ex-convicts, dope addicts, and men and women who, through despair and self-hatred, have sunk to moral degeneracy. This must be attempted on a much larger scale and without the negative overtones that accompany black Muslimism." That was MLK.
Yeah, I mean, he laid it out pretty clearly. And I think, my perspective on this is I don't begrudge anyone who feels like they can't trust the Women's March now because of their association with Farrakhan, but I also don't begrudge people who feel like this is a conflict that can be resolved and choose to continue to work with the Women's March. To me, it's a matter of conscience. It's up to each individual person.
I'm gonna bring in the panel here. Tamika, I want to start with you. Reading that quote, first of all, when I was reading the book, I was like, damn! But reading that quote, and then when you think about the fact when Malcolm X privately met with Coretta Scott King, when Dr. King was in jail in Birmingham, when Malcolm X, despite all the things he was saying publicly, we learned through Ruby Dee and Ossie Davis, went to their hotel room on August 28th, 1963, and said, let Dr. King know if he needs my help. This is on the day of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. I'm there for him. And this, to me, is the perfect example of what I think non-black people have no clue about black folks, where they have no understanding how a million black men can show up for the Million Man March, and an overwhelming number were Christian. And then they were like, okay, I don't understand. What are y'all doing? Why are y'all showing up here? They didn't understand why there were black gay men who were showing up to the Million Man March. Like, what are you doing? And because they have no clue about black people.
Yeah. I mean, so you say they don't have a clue, and there are many who don't even care. And I think that is another issue. They're not even concerned. That's right. And again, I want to make sure that I state very clearly that I stand against anti-Semitism. I stand against homophobia. I stand against bigotry and oppression of all people. All people. However, I also stand in my black skin. And so I have to be able to deal with the complexities of all the communities all the people I have to work with within my community. And there are a lot of different people who have a lot of different ideas, who have a lot of different positions, who make up all that we need in order to just be able to get by. Forget about becoming like, Barack Obama out here. I'm talking about just being able to like get a slice of bread. There's a lot of steps to that. So I'm not going to allow people to tie me or link me to this in a way that erases my work, who I am, that for 20 years of my life I have organized under the King tradition, actually. And that tradition says that we focus on fighting systems of oppression and not people that we don't necessarily agree with on particular positions. That is not the goal. There is no way for us to use condemnation and denunciation and then think we somehow going to be able to come back to the table and work together on trying to figure out these incredibly difficult issues around our children. And the other thing I want to say, because they'll run the clip and say I said that people are killing people and whatever. The question here today was whether or not my sister has called for violence against anyone. And what I'm saying is her position is that people who are put in certain positions may do things that she does not necessarily agree with. Let's figure out how to make that end.
Greg?
Well, I mean, brother, when we looking at the McDonald's clip last week, I think about the fact that, Claude McKay wrote a poem, said, "We must die, let us nobly die." You just gonna let somebody punch you in the face? I mean, at the end of the day, I couldn't have put it any better than Tamika Mallory just put it, and you just put it, sister. I'm against all forms of oppression. I'm against anyone being oppressed. And I am in that position in my black skin. So I'm saying I'm against anybody who harms any African who's in harm's way, any human being in harm's way. But when you think about that in the context of our struggle, you also said it brilliantly. There are some people who just don't care what black people think.
Right.
Any argument we would have here, they're looking at all of us in the same way. And when I think about the fact that the Nation of Islam, I mean, I knew Khalid Muhammad, and Jesse Jackson. You go all the way across the road. You can go Barbara Reynolds. You can talk about anybody in our community. We are not a monolith, but one thing we all agree on, we're all in danger.
Yeah.
And so anybody who wants to condemn you, who has never done anything for us, mute. I don't want to hear it.
The other thing is, let's be honest, there's, on a number of subjects when it comes to black people, there is fear and ignorance out here if you don't look like me.
Yes.
And secondly is this, those who are fear or ignorance and who want total condemnation, ignore for the Nation of Islam, ignore their tremendous work in the prison system, in prison complex system, their work and their effective work in the community that Dr. King spoke about. But you ask about those million men who showed up, who were Christians and gay, and the issue of atonement and personal welfare and handling your business and standing up and being a father and a husband and doing the right thing. That day, and on many days, most people don't know that Louis Farrakhan doesn't preach from the Quran alone.
No.
He preaches from the Torah, and he preaches from the Bible and the Quran.
Well, in fact, if you actually read the books of Muhammad Ali, even though that was so ignored at his funeral, that was also part of when he came in, where they were taught they had to actually read both. Same with Malcolm X, with the Torah and the Bible. I want to get CJ
So I think that's an important point for us to remember.
I want to get CJ in here with a comment on that, and then I got to ask one more question. And I want Adam, I want you to respond to this, and Tamika. CJ, go ahead with your comment.
No, I mean, being black, it is very complex. I mean, even we're not monolithic within the black Republicans.
Sure.
Different spheres from us. What I hope when you talk about the Women's March coming up, that you take a step back and have a dialogue with us.
Who's us?
Us who?
Black Republicans.
I got this guy.
And figure out, what things that we're doing to benefit the community. Because it can't just be, if you said there's a whole lot of us, if you're not inviting us to have a conversation. I mean, there's the First Step Act that we've done, and you talk about the work that Farrakhan has done in reform prisons.
And now actually women who worked on that who've been to the Women's March. So
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand when you say you want, okay, hold on. When you say you want them to invite you, you know it's open to anybody. So what do you mean by
I want her to invite us and have us come in and sit down and have a closed door conversation. to have a conversation to begin.
Have you?
This is the first time I've met this young lady.
Previously asked anybody in the Women's March for that.
This is the first time I've had.
Okay, got it. Go ahead. All right, go ahead.
So am I going to respond to that? So first of all, just the mere fact that you are a black woman, my door is always open to you, and all women in general. So you call me and we can talk about anything. But I think that we're starting in the wrong place. The first thing I need is something to attract me to call you, because I need you for a reason. There's something that you must be working on that fits into the principles of what the Women's March is trying to accomplish. At the same time, the march is open to anyone. So if you want to come with your children, with your issues, bring them to the table.
Other black Republicans?
That's all black, any black Republican, anybody black non-affiliated, black gender non-conforming, black, anybody that you are, or any woman, you are invited to the Women's March. But if you are asking me about political parties, that is very different. You said black Republicans for a reason, and you talked about the First Step Act. What I think is that there should be some platform introduced to us to say, hey, here's where we think we can work together, and the Women's March will be open to having that conversation with you.
I wanted to mention this right quick. 21 years ago, they had a Million Women's March in Philly. I remember keeping everybody's kids, my godson, everybody. It was at least 500,000 women on the Parkway. Atla Shabazz and them was there, Maxine Waters.
Right.
What you're in a tradition, and you notice for 20 years plus of organizing, you didn't just start, you came in that tradition. These people need to understand who you are and who black women are.
The last thing I need to talk about, I want Tamika to respond to this, and Adam, definitely want to get your thoughts on this. So the letter was released, and this is what it's called. Go to my iPad. Black Women Leaders and Allies Support for Tamika Mallory, Co-Chair Women's March, Inc. Dated January 16, 2019. Dear Women's March, Inc. Board and members, we the undersigned are writing to express our universal, unified, unwavering support and love for our sister leader, Tamika Mallory. Many of us have mentored, worked with, and or been on the battlefield with her in the fight for civil rights, human rights, women's rights, racial justice, criminal justice, workers' rights, gun reform, and social justice for oppressed and marginalized people of all races, genders, income, and ages for decades. Tamika personifies the strength of Sojourner Truth, the tenacity of Shirley Chisholm, the warrior spirit of Fannie Lou Hamer, the grace and power of Dr. Dorothy Irene Height, and all of those ancestors whose shoulders she and black women across the generations stand on. And then, as I go down here, I just wanted for folks, so you know, who signed the letter. This was as of January 16th. Melanie Campbell, President, CEO, Black Women's Roundtable. Cora Masters-Berry, former First Lady of D.C. Also, Cleola Brown, President of A. Philip Randolph Institute. Latasha Brown, co-founder, Black Votes Matter. Donna Brazile, past interim chair, DNC. Thomas Dortch, chair of the board of 100 Black Men of America. Kristen Clark, President and Executive Director, Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. Michaela Angela Davis, journalist and activist. Rosalind Brock, Chair Emeritus, NAACP. Janetta Cole, National Council of Negro Women. Leah Daughtry, Convener, Power Rising. Derek Johnson, as he said earlier, President, CEO, NAACP. Avis Jones DeWeaver. Diane Babineau, Felicia Davis, Hazel Dukes, Reverend Tony Lee, Carol Joyner, Dr. Julianne Malveaux, Mark Morreale, Mignon Moore. And the list go Reverend Franklin Richardson, Susan Taylor, Dr. Elsie Scott, President and CEO of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, Dr. Barbara Williams Skinner, and the list goes on and on and on. And so first I want to ask Tamika, get just your thoughts on these black women being very public, and black men on here, being very public for their support for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yes, they are supporting me because many of those folks have with me along the way, you know, got me in shape, helped me straighten my back and talk right. And,
No doubt.
and I love them for all the moments when they challenged me and loved up on me. But I don't think this is as much about me as it is the moment that we're in. That they see what is happening to me, what is also happening to Angela Davis, what is also happening to Maxine Waters, what is also happening to Ayanna Pressley, and they are standing up to say we won't roll over and allow it to just go without there being a response from our community. And so what I hope is that people understand that I am actually I'm in the middle here of like trying to hold back everybody, calm down, we all gonna be all right, we're gonna get through this, because black women, if you check social media, after again watching Meghan McCain's behavior, and also paying attention to these last few weeks, how black women have just been under attack I think that what we're going to see is a response from black women that I'm not sure folks are really ready to deal with. Because when we get upset, it's not like anything else. We know that no one is really going to protect us, so we have to protect ourselves. Whenever we see it, and it's unfortunate, you know, and it's something I think I should say here on your show. It's very unfortunate because there are those who felt like, you know, maybe you shouldn't talk. You know, maybe you should just be quiet and kind of fade to the back and let's get through all of this so we don't cause no more issues. Like, let's just protect you. But it doesn't protect me. And it's almost like I needed to go out in the public square and allow them to attempt a public lynching so that people could see, so that folks could say, hey, something is happening to our sister. And that is also happening to too many others. So unfortunately, fortunately, people are having sound conversations. Rabbis also released a letter saying we still support the Women's March. And Jews of color, not just black Jews, but Jews of color released a letter where I think over 85 of them said that they are coming to the march, that they support us, and that we're in dialogue. And they talked about how they are also erased from their own community. Right. So these issues are bigger than me, and it's deeper than the Women's March, but it's the moment that we're in.
And Adam, so I'll ask you, this will be the last comment for the show, obviously this topic. When you see that letter, when you see the names on that letter, these are folks who have alliances with many organizations and entities that are critical of Tamika and Linda and Carmen. So what do you think by having this letter being public, and they also have a petition on colorofchange.org as well, says to them, those folks who are attacking Tamika and others?
Well, I mean, I think it obviously conveys a message of unity around defending Tamika from what they feel are unfair accusations both about her and also about her colleagues. I think that, this is, as I said earlier, a really complicated issue. I don't begrudge, except for those people who I think are arguing in bad faith, and there are people who are doing that, who are not really giving people the benefit of the doubt. I think, this is a tough issue, and it's one that people have to make up their minds about. And, some people, as Tamika pointed out, some people have decided to pull out, and other people have decided to support them anyway. And I think it's really just a question of, give and take, and what you're willing to give and what you're willing to take.
All right, Adam Sir, staff writer for The Atlantic. We appreciate it. Thanks a bunch. Thanks a lot. Tamika, March Saturday, what time?
Saturday, folks need to, first of all, go to womensmarch.com, womensmarch.com to get more information, but we'll be gathering at 10 o'clock in the morning, Freedom Plaza.
All right, then. So I want to thank CJ, Scott Bolden, Greg Carr. Normally, of course, our
Thank
show
you for
was
thanking
1
me.
hour. Well,
I love it. Must be that red sweater.
I tolerate some
brother.
Kappas. I tolerate some Kappas. See, we try to have a conversation
I love you,
about
man.
unity. Right. But some people always screw it up. Some folks always screw it up. Scott.
I think he loves me. He loves me.
Aloysius Scott Bolden. That's what it is.
Gosh.
That
ain't my government name.
But when you bougie, you now go by A. Scott Bolden.
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah.
Oh, my Lord.
Don't forget, look, there's no other place having this kind of conversation when it comes to television, when it comes to digital. We want you to support RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. We want you to go to our website, join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar certainly goes to support what we do. Tomorrow, Decatur, Illinois, I'm going to be broadcasting my show from there. Of course, they're having their King Day events. Let me go ahead and give them the right shout out. The City of Decatur, the Illinois Human Relations Commission. I'm going to be their keynote speaker, and so I'll be doing the show from Decatur tomorrow. And then San Jose, California, I'll be speaking on Monday, MLK Day there as well. And we got something great lined up for y'all beginning Saturday, going all the way through Monday. So we're not going to be live on Monday. What we're doing Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, I have done a series of interviews over the past year with folks like Clarence Jones, with Dr. King's attorneys, Renona Clayton, who sat with Coretta Scott King in the 5 days after Dr. King was killed in her bedroom, taking those phone calls. And wait till you hear the story of when she climbed into the casket to apply makeup to Dr. King's face when the body was returned to Atlanta. Reverend C.T. Vivian, you want to hear this story about how he was almost drowned in an ocean in Florida by a police officer, again, who literally tried to drown him in the ocean. But you got to hear his response to what he was thinking as he was submerged underwater, being drowned. Trust me, he was laughing. Y'all got to see it. We also, of course, have the last sit-down interview that Dorothy Cotton did before she died in May of last year. Also, of course, we talked to so many other people. Bill Lucy, the great labor leader who worked with the men in Memphis for the sanitation workers strike. I also had interviews just with Bernice King and also her brother Martin Luther King III. And so I had all of these conversations, and so we're going to be airing these interviews. Because when we talk about King Day, of course, most folks are going to have, I'm telling you right now, all these mainstream people are going to have these dumbass discussions such as, is the dream still alive? As if that's the only speech he gave. And so we don't have those kind of stupid comments, those discussions on the show. I want you to hear from people who were lieutenants of Dr. King. We also talked to Juanita Abernathy, the widow of Ralph Abernathy, and also one person who I absolutely always wanted to interview, Reverend Dr. James Lawson, 90 years old. And wait till you hear what he has to say to organizers today, young folks, about how you mobilize and organize. Folks, we're going to have all those interviews beginning on, so it's going to be Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. And let me just go ahead and say it right now. There's no black network in America that's actually showing you this kind of stuff. There's no black there's no black website that's going to provide you this kind of coverage as well. And that's why we matter. So your dollars actually go to support making those kind of interviews possible. Scott, I still ain't got your check. I know that don't front. So go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Y'all can use PayPal. If you ain't got a check, I can do PayPal, Cash App, or Square as well. Y'all have a great one, folks.